All right. Welcome in to another episode of the Fit Parent Podcast. I don't know why I do this weird voice when I first start. It's a little weird.
I think the audience really appreciates it, though. They understand how awkward and weird you are, so it makes them feel really wrong.
It's my radio voice. Also I have these new headphones on and it's like kind of echoey in my ears. Like this might irritate me to the point where I have to switch at some point, but we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. But
You're
I
not
look
weird.
official though, right? I feel like I
Yeah,
got the mic. I look like I'm the big deal. This was my Christmas gift from Megan. This is our first podcast post Christmas. This is last year she got me the mic. This year the headphones. Next
Hey man,
year
in 3 more years, we may have enough studio.
a whole dang studio. Oh man. We're looking for an office. That's the next step. So I'm not
Mhm.
doing this in my kids' playroom, basically, because that's where we currently do it.
I moved spaces today. I'm not in my office. I'm in my Lego room, which like anyone else would call this a dining room, but
Mhm.
it's where I keep my Lego village of,
Wow.
and those are for people who aren't watching us. We have the adult, like expert level Legos that my husband and I put together because we're super nerdy and it's a nice stress relief after like a tough day. And we don't let our child help us. We're like, you stay away, you'll mess it
Don't
up.
touch it. Oh man. That's we got Levi, we got all the kids these things called magnetiles for
Oh, I
Christmas.
love magnet tiles
They're
as a
really
person.
cool. Uh by the way, earmuffs for children, putting them together on Christmas Eve so that there was like they were like out and I made a thing. Took me longer to build something that didn't fall apart with those and like try to use all the things and like what am I trying to build
Mm-hmm.
than it did to like put together their kitchen last year. And Megan was like,
Yeah,
which one was harder? I was like, the kitchen or the magnetiles, because the kitchen, I knew what it was supposed to look like.
yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. My creativity was not there. Or
Did
like
you get
Levi,
the extension kit? They have magnetile extension kits now. So they have like a dinosaur world.
yeah,
Really
my
cool.
mother-in-law got him the dinosaur. We just got the basic one because he has them at school and he really likes them. And so it's, the squares and the triangles and whatever, and they can kind of
Mhm.
make what they want to. So he likes to make a snake, which basically is just, you just put a bunch of them, but then he wants to make the head. And so then I'm
Mhm.
like trying to make the head. I'm like, I have a vision for how this head's going to look, but they keep on, like, he keeps on one element. I'm like, you're going to mess it up. Like, I am making the perfect snake head. Like, don't
All
touch
right,
it.
pro tip: leave them out during an adult party, like when there's no children. Eventually, this will happen to you. Eventually, we left them out during like many of our adult-only parties, and they were always being played with by people in their 30s. We're like, these are really cool. I'm like, yeah, I know, weird, awesome.
I don't know if we'll ever an adult only party. That feels very lofty. We had a couple friends come over who have 4 kids, and they came over, and Megan had. So
What's
this is
wrong with
like
all
our
of you?
friend group. It's so there's 3 couples, and we were all like, we were all very very good friends, and so we were friends prior to kids, and we lived 10 minutes down the road. They lived on like the same property, and then we lived 10 minutes down the road, so we hung out all the time, and then one of them started having kids, and so they moved and they came back, and we had dinner, and there was a moment where we were looking around the table and there was no kids with us, or there was one like infant. We are like, we have 10 kids between us now,
Oh,
3 couples, like 4, 3, and 3. And I'm like, this just happened very fast. Like, we became adults very quickly. And so they
yeah.
came over, they have their 4 kids, and they came over. And this was Megan's idea, which was, I was like, this is a fun idea. But she had the idea that we were going to play a game. We were going to play a board game. The adults were going to play a board game with
How did that go?
7 children running around. I'm like, this is the most foolish. I mean, we were able to kind of pull it off. Like we put our kids to bed basically, and their kids just stayed up, and they were like, "We'll go to bed. They'll go to bed eventually."
Yeah.
And so like we cut it in half, but it was quite something. So adult only party is a bit off. Uh,
Eventually, I said.
Eventually, yes. 5 years from now, when my
We only
kids are,
had one kid that we had to pawn off onto grandparents to be able to have adult
yeah,
only parties. So
see,
that was
that's the
something.
challenge. Like anytime we like try to go do anything like overnight, we got to get two. We got to recruit both
Mm,
sets of grandparents because we're not
right.
sending all three to one.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's a bit of an endeavor
Yeah.
to make it happen. At some point, we'll figure it out. They'll
It'll
figure it out.
happen. It'll happen. I'm not worried.
But you mentioned that that is a stress relief for you, which is a wonderful transition
Yes.
into what we're talking about today. Oh, look at
Almost like
that.
I thought about
You
that.
you did. You're so silly. So today we are, I don't know if it's the second or the third S. I guess if you want to consider sleep, it's one of the four S's. If you're not considering sleep because that was part of the hierarchy, then this is the second S of fat loss. And these are, again, the things that make the hierarchy, the mechanics, the building blocks of fat loss easier or
Mhm.
able to do them. And so today we're talking about stress management, stress in general, stress management being the second one. And so we're going to talk, as we have been, about what is stress, why is this an important factor in the fat loss and weight loss and overall health process, but then also going to be talking about stress as a whole and some strategies to manage stress and the values of it. I told Amy before we hopped on, this is the most notes that I have brought to a podcast. And I bet you didn't think that I had notes when I did this. I was just going off the cuff. No, I prepare. um,
Sure do.
but this is the most notes that I have and the most kind of digging into it just to make sure that I hit on everything. So I'm excited to do that as we dive in today. So want to start first of all with this is maybe a little bit backward into what we're going to talk about, but we'll talk about what is stress a little bit more down the road. But want to talk about why this is an important part in the fat loss process to start, and then kind of give some strategy, like talk a little bit more about what it is and then some strategy. So why is stress management so important when it comes to fat loss? It is very, very similar to sleep. All right. If you remember the sleep episode, if you haven't checked that out, you should absolutely go listen to that one because they're very related.
Mhm.
Um, Sleep and stress, stress and sleep, right? If you have good sleep, it's going to reduce your stress. If you are high stress, it's going to reduce your sleep, which, in turn goes this way, right? So it's very cyclical. These are very related to each other. And really the mark of, um, are you handling your stress pretty well is can you sleep? That's usually a good indicator. Like if you can get a decent night's sleep, then you're probably at a reasonable stress level. Um, now, and poor sleep, we talked about, is a form of stress. It
Mhm.
adds to your stress, right? You start the day, like last night was a little rough. I'll be honest with you, from a sleep perspective. The kids, they'll wake up sometimes, in the middle of the night. Um, but last night was like the timing of it was really rough. Like I don't know if I remember this from when the kids were newborns. Um, but so the twins woke up last night at like 10:30, 11, and so I go to bed at like 9. Right, so
Mhm.
that's like right as I'm getting into like deep sleep, and so I'm like wicked groggy. And so when the kids were all younger, and you do like the feedings in the night, and we would do it in shifts and things like that. And so we did like it was clockwork. It was every 3 hours. So it was like 7 p.m., 10 p.m., 1 a.m., 4 a.m., 7 a.m. Like that was the schedule that we were on basically.
Mhm.
And I couldn't go to sleep before the 10 p.m. feeding or the 1 a.m. feeding because if I went to sleep and I got like 2 hours and then I had to wake up, I was like, it was such a weird space for me. I was super tired and I really groggy and it made it really difficult for me to sleep. Like I needed to do so I would stay up until the one a.m. feeding and let Megan sleep through that one because we had to bottle feed our kids because her milk never came in,
Mhm.
which that could be maybe an interesting episode to talk about breastfeeding at some point.
It
um,
might be.
I'd have to dig into that, but um, maybe I have her on talk about that, just our experience. But the idea of so I would stay up until 1 and then I would be able to sleep through the 4 a.m. one. So I would go from 1 until 7, and I'd get like a chunk of sleep that was
Mhm.
better. I say all this to say, so like I got woken up at 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then got back to sleep, and I was like a little tough. I was very, very groggy during that time. And then
Yeah.
Levi woke up at like 2. And I was like, this is just a really rough go of this. And then I was, my alarm goes off at 5. So I was like, all right, well, that was fun. That was a good time. So
Times.
say all that to
Got it.
say, like, that's a form of stress, right? Like I wake up and I'm like, I'm not at 100% today, certainly.
Mhm.
It's a form of stress. And so why is this a challenge when it comes to fat loss and weight loss and overall fitness and things like that? Well, uh, when you're stressed, the same challenges occur as when you are tired, which is it makes it difficult to do the things that you need to do in order to lose fat, and because you're stressed, like you're focused on the stress piece of it. Like the top of your priority list is not I'm going to eat in a calorie deficit, because calorie deficit is a form of stress. Like you're
Mhm.
putting your body into
Yes.
further stress, and you feel like you're brimming with stress, and so you're like, I just want to eat. Like the stress eating piece of it, some of it's comfort, some of it's emotion, right? But some of it's just like my body can't handle being hungry on top of the stress that I'm already experiencing, because
Mhm.
hunger is a form of stress. The idea of working out, because working out is a form of stress, good
Mhm.
stress, bad stress, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But like working out's a form of stress, and so if I'm already brimming with stress, the idea that I'm going to go do this, timing could be a part of it. Like if I'm stressed about, like, I feel really busy and scattered, the idea of like, how am I going to take the time to go for a walk or go do a workout or prep some food? All of these things are harder when I'm stressed, because you're focused on whatever it is that's stressing you out.
Mhm.
Also, just think about experientially when you're stressed. Like if I'm stressed out, I don't generally crave protein or fruits
Right.
and vegetables, right? Like
No,
we're looking
more
for a
people.
we're looking for like a dopamine hit, right? Like we're
Yeah.
stressed, we need, like, we're here, we need like something to lift us out of it. And so we oftentimes go to something that's a little bit more comforting
Mhm.
to try to escape from the stress, and we don't have the skills we need to escape from it
Mhm.
naturally, and so we go to this other thing. And so in the same sense that um, sleep is a challenge when it comes to, or an important factor in terms of fat loss, managing your stress makes it easier for you to do all of the other building blocks, right? The 7 building blocks of fat loss: calorie
Mhm.
deficit, protein, fiber, sleep, movement, strength training, cardio. All of those things become simpler when you're not overly stressed.
Mhm.
And those are the things that move the needle. Another factor in this, and this is a subtle piece, and then we're going to dive into a little bit more of what stress is and that sort of thing. But another factor in this is the psychological piece of this, which
Mhm.
is stress, and we've talked about this in uh, ad nauseum on the reasons why the scale can fluctuate.
Mhm.
Um, but the scale fluctuates for one of two reasons. It's either water retention or food retention. Like if you see a spike up on the scale, for instance,
Yeah.
right? Like your fat, your body fat is going to go up or down,
Mhm.
but it's going to go at a certain pace. But any of the fluctuations beyond that is going to be water retention and food in your system, like extra water, extra food. And so extra food is you ate a little bit later, or you ate a little bit more than you normally would. And there's
Mhm.
just basically you have to poop, right? Water retention is you had more salt, you had more carbs, all of those things just hold on to water. But the rest
Mhm.
of them are all related to stress: poor sleep, hard workout, and just stress in general. Because stress, when you're stressed, it releases a hormone called cortisol, and cortisol has gotten, I'm not going to get too into the science of this, I'm not going to be, Andrew Huberman and get crazy with all the things, but this is an important hormone to understand, because it's demonized, I think,
Mhm.
popularly in the fitness industry. Is like, you gotta reduce your cortisol levels. Like you gotta reduce your cortisol levels. Like it's bad for you, and it's not bad for you. Like cortisol is a natural occurring hormone that is essential for living.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's
Is that the fight or
necessary.
is cortisol the fight or flight?
Adrenaline is, but
Okay.
cortisol is your body's response to it. Where if when faced with a stressful situation, so this kind of goes back to where stress comes is originated from, like when we were lived in the wilderness and we're like, all right, lions and tigers and bears,
Oh
right?
my.
Yeah, oh my, we gotta have that response to it. So cortisol is part of like adrenaline, cortisol, right? Think about what it would be if that was the situation. If I was faced with a bear, that's a stressful situation. Water retention means that like my body's not going to let anything out. It's just like that's not priority one right now. Like bowel
Right.
movements are not priority one right now. I'm holding on to everything because all of my focus is on survival in this
Mm-hmm.
moment. And so our body holds on to water when we're stressed. So poor sleep as a form of stress, you hold on to more water. A hard workout, and again, we'll dig into this a little bit more, is a form of stress. You hold on to more water. Why is that psychologically challenging when you think about fat loss? If I am stressed, even if I make it through the day mechanically and I don't derail from my calorie deficit and I do all these other things and I see the scale go up because I'm stressed, because I stressed, cortisol, water retention, the scale goes
Mm-hmm.
up and I did everything right the day before.
Mm-hmm.
That is a new form of stress where I say, why is the scale up? I'm doing everything right. This is so frustrating. Why can't I seem to make any progress?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's very easy for us to then throw in the towel because it's like, well, it's not even working. Why am I bothering? And I'm already stressed. Like, I can't do this one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about managing stress, now you cannot, and notice that I'm not saying removing stress because stress is a
No.
natural part of life and most of it's not in your control.
Yeah.
Managing your stress and how you respond to it and then your levels of it is going to help you mitigate the two sides of this, which is one, your ability to still do the things that you need to do even in the face of stressful situations, and
Mm-hmm.
two, you're not holding on to these high cortisol levels that carry over where then we see the water spike dramatically
Mm-hmm.
consistently and get discouraged and stop doing the process
Mm-hmm.
because we have to continue to do the process in order to see the results. So where the scale becomes an issue is when that tells us that we're not doing the things that we are, right? The scale is telling us something that different than what's reality.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two ways that high stress can impact our fat loss. Pretty cursory to this point. Kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I'm following.
Cool.
It's nice to like understand some of this stuff because obviously all of us experience stress, but it's
Yes.
almost reassuring to hear about that it can impact other areas of your life because like I don't know, there are days where the stress goes up and then your self doubt goes way up too. So it's just nice to hear that this is natural and it's
100%.
normal, but there are ways that we can combat it a little bit.
Yeah. So now we're going to get into what is stress and how to combat it. All right. So the first thing that we need to understand is stress by itself is not inherently good or bad. Okay.
Yeah.
There are good stressors and there are bad stressors. It was distress and eustress. All right. So stress has the ability to be productive, and we'll talk about that. And it also has the ability to be not productive. And it's how we manage it, it's how we respond to it that indicates what it is. But it's also generic in the idea that it is stress is indifferent to the stressors. We respond the same way regardless of what is causing us stress. Like the physiological response to stress is the same if I do a workout, right? I do a hard strength training workout. That is a form of stress on my body. It is a good form of stress,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a hard form of stress on my body.
Mm-hmm.
My body is the physiological response to that stress is exactly the same as I don't know, I'm faced with a bear, or like my kid is misbehaving and shouting at me, or
Mm-hmm.
my family member just got a really bad diagnosis, right? All of
Mm-hmm.
those are negative stressors, but my body doesn't know the difference. My body's going to respond to it the exact same way. And so some of the stressors that come into our life are the things that we are choosing to do. And that's fine. But a lot of the stressors are outside of our control,
Mm-hmm.
right? You are not necessarily, and this is coming back to like we control the process, not the outcome. We are not in control of a lot of the things that happen to us. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
in control of whether my kids wake up tomorrow morning or in the middle of the night, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can do things to try to help, but if they wake up, they wake up.
Yeah.
I'm not in control of a family member who gets a tough diagnosis. I'm not in control of the jerk driver who veers into my lane. That's a form of stress,
Mm-hmm.
right? I am not in control of that piece of it. And so stressors are going to come. And so the idea that we're going to avoid stress is foolish to the point of delirious
Mm-hmm.
because it's part of our life. And so it's
Yeah.
not that we need to avoid it, that it's a bad thing. It's how we respond to it that's important. And we also can even take unfortunate or maybe negative stressors and have them help us
Mm-hmm.
with our response to it. It's an opportunity to practice
Mm-hmm.
because stress management is a muscle, just like your other muscles are, right? It's something that we practice doing. We get better at the more we do it. This is
Mm-hmm.
why I say all the time, uh, if you want to see what your unfiltered self is, look at your toddler. Like
Yep.
we feel like everything that my kid feels, I feel. I've
Mm-hmm.
just gotten better at maybe centering myself than he
Mm-hmm.
has. Now he might feel it a little bit more intensely or whatever it is, but like I reached the point where I'm like I respond the way that he responds, and it's not good. But like he last night, he like looked at me, he pointed at me with a fist, and he was like, "No," and I was like, I grabbed his fist and I got right in his face and I said, "No, that is not okay," because I had to, right? Like I had to like be firm
Yeah.
and say like that's not an okay thing to do. But I was upset because that's
Yeah.
not a pleasant thing for if somebody got in your face, an adult got in your face and put their fist 2 inches from your face and said no and yelled at you, like that's not a pleasant experience.
No.
But this is sometimes what we want to do, right? There's times where I just want to lie on the floor and cry. And there's times that I do. Like, quite honestly. Like, I just, I'm like, this is just not my day. Or want to punch a wall or hit a pillow or, you know what I mean? Like, we get these frustration, we get these feelings, and we just become better at, or better is maybe not the word, we've learned how to manage them a little bit differently, and that comes through practice. And there's a reason why my 3-year-old cannot do it or my 2-year-olds cannot do it as well as me at 32 can do it versus somebody who's 62 who's lived a little bit more life and has more perspective, right? They might be a little bit more measured than me. But it depends on how they do it, right? Because we all know the 62-year-old who is off the reservation because they haven't taken the time to practice. Like time doesn't necessarily do it. It's
Mm-hmm.
how you are proactive about handling it.
Mm-hmm.
So stressors live. So again, we're talking about stressors, the things that cause stress. They can be both physical, a workout,
Mm-hmm.
a bear. I don't know how many people are seeing bears,
Workout
but
there.
um,
You know.
like it's a physical stress or it's a psychological stress. It's that's oftentimes perceived, but it's in different things stress different people, right? It could be something like for me, I'll just own this. I am. You all might be surprised by this, but I have some OCD tendencies. Let's just say that
What? No.
I
Never
live
saw
I
that
live on
coming.
I have some tendencies. This has never been diagnosed, but I think if I were to look at myself, right, the plates are going to be color coordinated. Why would they not be color coordinated? There are colors to them.
Welcome to the tribe.
Yes, the
Glad to have
toys
you.
are going
Glad
to
to
get put back where they're supposed to go, not
Yes.
just thrown willy nilly into the thing,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I have some I live on that spectrum a little bit, and so one of the things that causes me stress that maybe would not cause other people stress who are maybe a little bit more free spirited, which is not a bad thing, right? Like my wife, bless her, is a free spirit. And if I did not have her, I would have no fun. I wouldn't have no fun, but like she makes my life a lot more fun because
Yeah.
she's a little bit more free spirited and impromptu and that sort of thing. And I'm more structured. And so you kind of need these people, like a little relationship thing. This is a la Dave Ramsey, right? You need the nerd and you need the free spirit. Like the free
Mm-hmm.
spirit gives the nerd a life, and the nerd gives the free spirit some sort of structure so that they don't run out of money and time and everything like that. And so when we get something that I'm planning on, I have an expectation of something happening a certain way, and it doesn't happen that way. I sometimes get disproportionately stressed as compared to somebody else. Like that is more of a stressor to me than it might be to somebody who maybe isn't quite so type A as me. Like I have a harder time letting go of that. Now I've had to learn, like you learn this over the course of time. You can maybe get better at it. And the hope is that I have, and I will continue to. Kids do this to you. Like you can't
Mm-hmm.
really have hard lines. And so some of this is circumstances, but the psychological stressors are oftentimes perceived differently. They're not binary in the same way that maybe a physical stressor is, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I have done a hard workout and you have done a hard workout. It might be relative to each of us what hard is, but that stressor is going to look fairly similar to both of us if we took ourselves to the same percentage of our capacity.
Yeah.
But the same thing that stresses me out might not stress you out, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
But the stressors in and of themselves are not necessarily inherently bad. They're also not necessarily things that we can control or avoid. But when we get the stress, this is what our body's response is. And again, this goes back to when we were nomads, right? Your body is going to say yes to certain things, certain
Mm-hmm.
functions, and no to other things. It's going to prioritize things. Like, yes, your legs are going to be able to run when you are
Mm-hmm.
stressed. Like, you're going to have blood flowing all there. But digestion is not a top priority when you are
Mm-hmm.
stressed. This is why people
Mm-hmm.
can feel bloated when they're stressed,
Mm-hmm.
because your body is not prioritizing what functions it feels are optional
Mm-hmm.
in those moments.
Right.
So, what we need to do when faced with stressors, this is the management piece of it. This is when we're going to start to get into. Um, I'll go one more thing here. So, stress can be good. I'll go here. Stress can be good in the sense of like, if you get sick, right, you get a virus, whatever it is, that's a stressor.
Mm-hmm.
And your body's response to it is to get stressed. And then the productive thing that it does is it sends things to you to combat the virus,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is a stress response to the stressor. Now, that's not necessarily a pleasant stressor, and it's not a pleasant response, but your body is doing it,
Right.
right? And that causes inflammation. Everybody's like, oh, avoid inflammation. Like, inflammation is bad for you. No, like, not necessarily. If you get cut and you get, like, you need, like, it's your body's response to protect
Right.
you.
Right. It's
Like,
sending extra good stuff to fix it.
has to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have an exercise or you do a workout and you get to the end of it and you feel whatever, it's your legs are burning or you're tired or whatever it is, right? That's a stressful response. Your body's like, that's hard. But we
Mm-hmm.
talked about during the strength training episode, if you're not pushing yourself to a point where it's hard, your body is not forced to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And if your body doesn't adapt, you don't grow.
Right.
So in order to challenge our body to improve, we need to apply an appropriate level of stress to it. It can be productive.
Mm-hmm.
Productive in terms of work or life, right? Like there's, if you
Yep.
procrastinate, if you wait to the last minute, it only takes a minute, right? But like
Yeah.
the idea of if you're down to the wire
Mm-hmm.
and you're stressed about the fact that you're down to the wire, it's not necessarily pleasant, but you are going to be more productive because
Absolutely.
you have to be.
Yep. I have always worked better with a deadline because it added that little piece of stress that I needed to be able to be as productive as I can be. If
Yes.
there's no deadline, then I'm just like, nah, I'll work on it whenever I have time, and then
Yes.
it just doesn't get done.
100%. So
Yeah.
this is where when we think about stressors, we can be like, oh, stress is all bad. No, stress can be good.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how we do it and how long it lasts. So this is
Mm-hmm.
where stress can turn from productive to not productive, which
Mm-hmm.
is the idea of acute stress versus chronic stress. Acute stress is a beginning and an end, right? Like I have
Mm-hmm.
a deadline. Now it could be medium length, right? Like, oh, I'm in a stressful season right now. Like we just came out on the heels of the holidays. That can be a stressful season for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that could be a couple of weeks or whatever it is, that's a stressful time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still acute because you are not like, there's a time at which the stressor, the
Mm-hmm.
holiday season, is now done.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now we know whether or not we're managing our stress appropriately during these acute stressful situations by how we rebound from those stressful situations. Meaning, you got this, right? You were sick last week,
Yep.
right? So on the heels of a high stress acute situation, then we are potential, if we haven't been able to manage it appropriately, then we are vulnerable to illness or whatever because our body has like tapped out its ability to handle any other stressors, right? Like you're
You
like
just go on the shutdown mode.
you shut it down because your
Yep.
body's just like I can't. Or think of an adrenaline situation, right? Like if you have an like you ever get like really tired after like a full day of like holy cow, I was going, and then you just crash hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, anyone who's like really high anxiety knows if you have like a true anxiety attack,
Yep.
once it's over, you
Sleep.
need to go to sleep. You need to
Sleep.
because you're exhausted. You're physically exhausted. You're mentally exhausted. You just need to sleep. And it could be like you could have had your anxiety attack at 7 a.m. and it's over at
Mm,
8 a.m. And then you're like, okay, I'm done for the day.
yeah.
Like I can't.
Shut it down.
Yeah, you
100%.
shut down. Yep.
Yeah. It's because we have a limited capacity for this. So our ability to manage those stressful situations, whether it's like momentary, right? So we'll talk about momentary, like in the moment I am stressed, like this is a stressful
Mhm.
situation. I need to be able to mitigate this to the point where it doesn't debilitate me from doing anything else afterward, because that's the
Yeah.
point that we're talking about here. But also if it's a little bit longer term, medium term, how do we do that? And then avoiding the chronic stress situations, because when these stretch out into like I am in a state of stress long term, this is where we have the negative health effects, right? So
Yeah.
there's negative effects on your fat loss and your ability to do things, right? And
Hmm.
like the scale going up and that sort of thing. Like that's one side of it. But the much more dramatic, like dangerous side of things that people talk about, like, hey, stress is a really bad thing. This is chronic stress that they're talking about. This is elevated heart rate, elevated blood pressure, like heart disease, all of these things. You've probably seen the scary pictures of like a healthy brain versus a stress brain, right?
Hmm.
Stress increases, Alzheimer's and dementia, all of these things. Like what they're talking about with that is not momentary stress, not acute
Hmm.
stress, and probably not even medium term stress, depending on how you handle it. They're talking about
Hmm.
chronic stress. Chronic stress that is just staying with you. And so when we're thinking about how do we manage stress, there are proactive and there are reactive strategies to managing stress. Proactive is where am I starting? Because
Hmm.
if I start my day at a level 7, any stressor is going to take me to a 10.
Hmm.
And it's going to be difficult for me to manage at a 10 all the time.
Hmm.
So it's starting your baseline a little bit lower, and that's being proactive about it. And then there's reactive, which is we do need strategies to
Yep.
handle stress, and reactive versus responsive, like proactive, reactive is, it just is alliterative or whatever it is, but like response versus react is the idea. So you have strategies in the moment because
Mm-hmm.
stressors happen, and this is particularly helpful in the moment. So I want to start with the reactive side of things, because the
Mm-hmm.
proactive side of things is a little bit more nebulous. So the reactive side of things is, how do I handle stress, a stressful situation when it comes up? Okay. And then also, how do I increase my threshold for what is stressful to me, or your
Mm-hmm.
capacity on this? Because, and there's two sides to this. So and this is going to sound dumb. I don't know if dumb's the right word. This is going to sound a little maybe foofy, right? Talk about breathing, right? But breathing
Oh,
is
so helpful.
highly, highly underrated.
Yep.
And the way that we can breathe, right? So it's not just, all right, take some deep breaths. Okay. But
Mm-hmm.
the idea of like, if I'm faced with a stressful situation, this is, again, talking about kids. My kid's having a meltdown, and I tell him to calm down.
Ooh, don't do that.
He can't calm down. It actually stresses him out more.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
he
the worst thing
physically,
you can say to someone.
you
You're
cannot,
stressed.
because it's like me telling him to sprout wings and fly. It's not like, oh, I cannot do it in this moment. So
Mm-hmm.
telling yourself to calm down, telling somebody else to calm down is not a helpful thing. It's actually can be hurtful in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
process that we're trying to do here. But we do need to center ourselves in the place of what's happening to us when we get stressed out. And one of the first things that happens is our heart starts to beat really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we need to slow our heart rate down.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to be one of the things that reduces our stress in the moment, right? The
Mm-hmm.
heart rate. Now, a lot of this is, we, I heard this phrase and I thought it was great, because the reason why calm down doesn't work is you can't use the mind to control the mind.
Mm-hmm. That's
Okay.
really good.
You can't try to think yourself out of the way that you're thinking or feeling. Like you like you can't, you need to use the body to control the mind, and we can use the mind to control the body. Okay. So the idea is, if I am stressed, which is a psychological, like it's in my head, right? It's a physical response to what's happening in my head. The reaction, the way that I combat it is through my body, because my mind can't do it. My mind can't just be like, calm down. And then
Yeah.
because it's not a voluntary response,
Right.
it's an involuntary response. It's your autonomic nervous system, which is the
Mm-hmm.
ones that cause your bodily functions, your organs to move. And like, you can't be like, I want my spleen to work harder. Like you can't. And then
This does.
there's only one autonomic function that we have control over, and that's our breathing. The only thing that you will do involuntarily is breathe, but you can also control your breath.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your diaphragm, is the only muscle that is controlled by your autonomic nervous system that you also have control over. It's wild
Mm-hmm.
this way, and it's the way that we were built, designed to be
Mm-hmm.
able to do this. Now, our heart is moving fast, stressful situation, heart's pumping. If I take a deep inhale, what happens? I actually decrease the space for my heart to work.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it going to do? It's going to beat faster
Mm-hmm.
to get the same, because it's like, I got to get blood where blood needs to go, because this is a stressful situation. I need blood to the extremities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reaction, fight, flight, or fetal, right? Like, blood needs to go to the extremities right now, because might need to run.
Mm-hmm.
So your heart is pumping fast. If I
Mm-hmm.
take a deep inhale and then hold it, certainly, right? Now there's not as much space for my heart to pump. And we talked about this in the cardio episode, right? Where we talk
Mm-hmm.
about the two functions of the heart, is how much does it expand and how hard does it contract, right? If I'm trying to get more blood, I need a big extension and a hard contraction. If I
Mm-hmm.
can't expand, right? Like I'm choked on the bike pump. I can't get a full extension, right? What am I going to do to get the same amount of air out? I'm going to pump faster and harder.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to go the opposite direction of what I'm trying to do by taking a deep inhale.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I need to do? I need more space for my heart to expand. So where does that come from? That means my diaphragm needs to get smaller. That's the exhale.
Mm-hmm.
So what we are going to do is to do a longer, more vigorous exhale than our inhale when you're doing your breathing. So if I'm
Yeah.
gonna you can nose, mouth, right? The general thing is in through your nose, out through your mouth. That's the kind of general thing. But you can do mouth, mouth. You can do nose. You don't really want to exhale through your nose because you're not going to be able to get as much. You can't do a vigorous exhale out through your nose.
Yeah.
So idea is I'm going to do an inhale, exhale, get it all out, all
Mm-hmm.
out. Maybe I do a, or the other thing is this is called something called the the physiological sigh, which is a term for a special way of doing this, which is you do a double inhale and then an exhale. So the double inhale is not necessarily, oh, I'm going to get a ton more breath in, but it's I'm going to get a little bit more breath in, but not necessarily expand my diaphragm all that much more. So I do an inhale. So inhale, second inhale, exhale. Vigorous exhale. So now I'm getting a little bit more air in with that extra inhale, but not necessarily expand. I'm not doing a big overdrawn inhale, right? I'm getting 2 inhales for the price of 1, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and then have more air to exhale. This psychological sigh. So this is the idea of I'm going to slow my heart rate through my breathing. I'm going to control my mind through my body. And the way that I control, the only thing that I can control within my body to control the things that are involuntary is my breathing.
Mm-hmm.
So nasal inhale, mouth exhale, either not necessarily shallower, but maybe a normal inhale and a longer exhale. Right. So in for 1, out for 3, 4, 5. Like get it all out, then do it again. Okay. And if
Mm-hmm.
you just sat there and you did 5 breaths like that, okay, you will notice you could do it right now. You could measure your heart rate,
I'm sure
sit
it would
there
go down.
still, close your eyes, and
Yeah.
then do this 5 to 10 times, and then measure your heart rate again.
I kind of want to try that.
It'd be a fun experiment for you. If you want to pause right now and do it, by all means. If you want to try it afterward, I would love to do it. But again, is it going to be dramatic? Maybe not as you're sitting here, right? Like if you're not in heightened stress, you're probably not going to see it happen. But if your
Right.
heart rate is high, all of this is relative. It's in terms of percentages, right? So just like we talk about fat loss and weight loss in terms of percentages, right? In the episode that we talked about why it's harder for women to lose weight, we talked about it as in terms of percentages, right? Somebody who's 120 pounds who's trying to lose 5 pounds, well, that's 4% of their body weight versus
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's 300 pounds who loses 4% of their body weight. That's 12 pounds. Okay. So it's all relative. So if my heart rate's high, elevated, because it's a stressful situation, I'm at 150 and I drop it 10 beats per minute, that's a pretty significant thing. If I'm at my resting heart rate, I'm probably not going to be able to drop it 10 beats per minute because I just don't have
Right.
the room.
Right.
So some of it would be you probably, if you were going to do this, like do some jumping jacks for 30 to 60 seconds, get your heart rate up a little bit, and then try the process.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see what this looks like. But also just try this in your next stressful situation, right? It's something you can do immediately in the moment to reduce your stress. So a stressor comes in, I feel myself getting stressed. I go from a 3 to an 8. All right. Can I bring myself from an 8 fairly immediately down to a 5? Potentially.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome is a lot of the elementary schools are starting breathing exercises with kids in kindergarten
Yeah.
as a response to stressors, but also as a way to just calm their bodies down is what they say. But we as adults know calm your body down means you're showing signs of stress. How can we reduce that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so my daughter's 9 and she knows so many different breathing exercises that she teaches to us when she gets
Yeah.
home. She's like, we do the rainbow breathing, or we do the
Mm-hmm.
flower breathing, and all these, or like we pretend we're blowing on a cup of hot tea, and that's
Yeah.
that extended exhale.
Mm-hmm.
But I just love that they're doing this with kids, because I grew up being told like, calm down, you're stressed,
Yeah.
calm down, and like you said, that doesn't work. It's like you
No.
can't say that to a person who's stressed out. They
Yeah.
can't hear that.
No, for sure. So the breathing piece is super underrated, and so I did an episode, gosh, it's probably, I don't know, 5 6 something like that, with Mike Levine, where he talks about breath a little bit and breath work.
Mhm.
And I'm going to have Jonathan Anginelli, I think I'm pronouncing his name, forgive me Jonathan if I'm butchering your name, but in the next probably the end of the month, I'm going to have him on. And he's big into breathing, right? His method is called the breathe move nurse, BMN. And he puts breathing first, because it's like that idea of, and I'm like, you know what, you're not wrong. Like, you're not wrong to hear this. Or when I had Dan Rosenthal on and we talked about, I said, what are your two things that you would do? He's like, I would focus on sleep and stress management first thing when it comes to fat loss,
Mhm.
because if you're doing those two things, it makes everything else so much simpler. If you're
Mhm.
breathing, if you're able to focus on your breath, if you're able to focus on your stress management, then it makes everything
Mhm.
else so much simpler. So double inhale, exhale, the physiological side, or just a longer exhale, vigorous, longer exhale, emphasize breathing. Those things are in the moment things that you can do. Now,
Mhm.
there are other things that we can do that are um, kind of in that medium term strategy, which is, how do I increase my capacity for stress? Okay, and then we're going to talk about, and this is kind of where we do the this will be the transitional piece between this and then chronic stress, which is really the proactive stuff that we're
Mhm.
trying to do. So acute stress, momentary stress, how do I handle it? That's absolutely breathing work. A
Mhm.
medium term stress is, this is where I raise my capacity for stress. This is the practicing handling stress situation. Okay.
Mhm.
And so this is something as simple as, I'm going to intentionally put myself into a stressful situation, a
Mhm.
controlled stressful situation, and I'm going to manage my stress within this situation. Okay. So now I'm going to be abundantly clear on this. I have no desire whatsoever to put myself into a cold tub. Okay.
Ugh, we've talked about this.
No
This,
desire whatsoever. And I've said it on here. But
yeah.
the premise of this is this, right? One, I've said I can see the benefits of this. Okay. I can see the benefits of this. One is, psychologically, I can do hard things. Okay. Now, there are
Mhm.
other hard things that I would like to do, much more than that. But then physiologically, the thing that you can do, this is a controlled, stressful situation that is acute, but where what do you do when you go into a cold tub? You focus on your breathing, right? Because the idea is, I'm forcing a stressful situation on myself, and then I'm forcing my body to learn to respond to it appropriately. Now, you can do the same thing with a hard workout.
Mhm.
You can do the same thing with doing something that is outside of your comfort zone. Public speaking, taking a class that you aren't comfortable with. A stressful situation for me recently was to do the virtual event that I did, and I had to record a talk for that. That was a stressful situation. Now, it was a controlled stressful situation that I chose to put on myself, but I had to mitigate my stress in that so that I could handle it long term. So the idea
Mhm.
is, how do I handle medium term stress? Well, this is where it gets cyclical. Okay. And I'll go back to the sleep piece. One of the best ways to improve your sleep is to work out during the day.
Mhm.
If you work out during the day and you move and you do things, you're going to be more tired at the end of the day. And so it's
Mhm.
going to be easier for you to sleep. All right. It is cyclical, which is then in turn going to make it easier for you to work out the next time.
Mhm.
Stress is the same way, right? If I'm exercising consistently, if I'm walking, running, strength training, if I'm eating high quality, less processed foods, All
Mm-hmm.
of these things are going to reduce my stress because I'm putting myself into a controlled, stressful situation, and then I'm making a conscious choice to respond to it appropriately. And so this is all just like the action motivation cycle, right? We take an action, we get results, then we're motivated to take more
Mm-hmm.
action, right? That's the cycle. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to start with an action though. And so if I take the action, whatever it might be, to I'm in a stressful situation, but I handle it appropriately, then the result is okay, I learned how to handle that stress. So then I'm more capable than for the next stressful, and I increase my threshold that way. So don't start with, so like this would be something, if I had a fear of heights, I would not go to the top of the Empire State Building, not the observation deck, but the wicked high one, and then
Yeah.
just hang off the edge as a first thing. I wouldn't be
Right.
like Tom Cruise, right, where he sat on the top of the tallest building in the world with no harness on, like a friggin' maniac. That's
Insane.
that's too much of a threshold. I've
Yeah.
gone too high. I have to start where I'm at. And so you start where you're at, you do something, you improve your threshold. And so then it's all a matter of then degrees. So
Mm-hmm.
now what was once a 10 for me is now a 6.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the difference is between an adult and a toddler, right?
Mm-hmm.
I told my toddler, what did I tell him last night? Uh, it was like he got the it was today for lunch. I made his lunch today, and I had already made it. I got a grilled cheese, and we got these things from my mom for Christmas that were like cutters of the sandwich into shapes,
It's
right?
very cute.
And he's wicked into dinosaurs, so I cut him a dinosaur, right? So he's got 2 dinosaurs for his lunch, and he was gung ho about it yesterday. He was bat over the moon about these dinosaurs. He's like, that was so great. Ate them all up. Was
Cool.
pumped. And so then, but last night he saw a couple of the other ones that my mom got, and they were like, it's just dinosaurs, but there's like a heart and a tree and a
Yeah.
star. And I'm like, none of those are as cool as a dinosaur, right? Particularly to a kid who's wicked into dinosaurs. So I made him
Yeah.
a dinosaur already today before he woke up, right? I packed his lunch. He had a dinosaur in his lunch. And I'm like getting the kids into the car. Actively, their coats are on, and I'm bringing them to the car. And he's like, Daddy, I want a heart grilled cheese sandwich. And I was like, you got a dinosaur grilled cheese sandwich. And he was like, no, I want a heart. I'm like, you can have a heart tomorrow or the next time we do a grilled cheese. Lost his mind. Like, just, you would have thought I shot him in the leg. Like, this poor kid, man, was losing it. And that's
Wow.
because what to adults would be like, this doesn't feel like a level 10, like the house is on fire response. Like,
Yeah.
it's not even a candle is lit, like it's an electric candle is turned on,
Mm-hmm.
but you're
Holy.
acting like the house is on fire. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It's an extreme response, is what
It's
I
an
used to say.
extreme, it feels like an extreme response to an adult, but for him, his capacity is not the same as mine. And so
Yeah.
what would be a level 2, like if you came over, and I don't know if this would be, but like if my sandwich was not cut into the shape that I wanted to, like if I went to a restaurant and they cut my sandwich, vertically instead of diagonally or something like that, and I lost my mind.
Diagonally. Always diagonally. It
I
looks
know it
better.
is. I
Better.
understand that it looks better, but like if I'm gonna have a meltdown because it's cut right, like you see these like crazy
Yeah.
videos of people being like, can't believe you put this in a paper cup. Like, why? I wouldn't have
Yeah.
ordered it if I knew it wasn't going to be in a regular mug. It's like, all right, like that person's capacity is lower. And now
Yeah.
it might be that they're just already brimmed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it didn't take a lot to set them over the edge, but also you're like, that doesn't feel like a level 10 situation.
Right.
And so the
Right.
way that we increase our capacity is by having a stressful situation that's controlled, right? So there's maybe a way that I could have handled that with him a little bit differently in
Mm-hmm.
hindsight, right? I'm not saying that he was right in his thing, but the way that I can help him is I could have the prep idea is the idea. Like I'm going to prepare him for this, and so I tell him ahead of time instead of him
Mm-hmm.
finding out when he wants something. Right? So hey, by the way, bud, I made you dinosaur grilled cheese for your lunch today. Pumped, right? So then when he sees it, it's like, hey, remember you were excited about the dinosaur grilled cheese. Like he's prepped for it. He's able to like handle the stressful situation because it's a controlled space
Mm-hmm.
versus an uncontrolled space. And so how we do this is we actively put ourselves in situations that are going to be potentially positive stressors that are appropriate for us now,
Mm-hmm.
and then we handle them, and that increases our capacity. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just a 1 degree of difficulty. The idea of like if you wanted to work out and you had a goal to bench press 225 pounds, the first time you come in to see me, I'm not going to put 225 pounds on the bar and say give it your best shot.
Good luck.
You're going to get buried, right?
Yeah.
You have to start where you're at, and then over the course of time you get stronger and stronger, and then it becomes, you go from 215 to 225. That's a reasonable jump,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to start where you're at. So that's the idea, is in a controlled situation, you force stress upon yourself to the level that you can handle it, and you
Mm-hmm.
prove to yourself that you can handle it using
Mm-hmm.
some of these acute skills and then longer term skills. Now, longer term skills and how do we avoid chronic stress? And this is where we're starting our day at a lower level, right? And this
Mm-hmm.
is how we mitigate medium term, certainly avoid longer term, and make
Mm-hmm.
acute stressful situations not overstimulate us, is because we start our day at a, this is the proactive side of
Mm-hmm.
stress management. And these are the things that are going to be true in general, right? So I'm not, again, I don't want to get too new agey, and I'm not going to tell, I'm going to tell you some things that I do, and I'm going to tell you some things that I don't do that I think could be valuable, whether my clients have done them or whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll be honest, and there's things that I don't do. Like I don't meditate in the traditional sense. I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's a ton of research on the value of meditation. I have tons of clients who've had success from meditation. I cannot, to this point in my life, I have not had success meditating in the traditional sense.
Yep, I'm with you. It almost
That's,
stresses me out more because
yeah,
I can't make my brain stop.
yeah. There's a guilt associated with like, why can't I? You know what I mean? Now, I can, but what does meditating look like for me? I will go mow the lawn
Mm-hmm.
and put on music that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really paying attention to, and I
Mm-hmm.
will let my mind go where it's going to go and
Yep.
just follow it down the rabbit holes. Or like when I used to drive an hour to teach, I would,
Mm-hmm.
in the mornings, because I wasn't fully awake yet, I would just, and it was 101, which is just a straight road. There's nobody on it. I would hit cruise control at 73 miles an hour. And I'm like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
33 minutes on this straight road that looks exactly the same. I'm not even,
Mm-hmm.
I probably won't see a car at 6:45 in
Yep.
the morning. I wouldn't listen to music. I would just sit
Ooh,
there in
started
silence.
hard.
I would
Mm-hmm.
just sit there in silence, and I would let my brain go where it was going to go first thing in the morning. And it would just be like, oh, that stream of consciousness, like, where did I go today? That was an interesting place to
Mm-hmm.
go to.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's, beneficial or not. And then what I do from that is I'll do a brain dump. So if there's something that comes up, I'm like, okay, that's worthy of thought. Like that's in my head, like that's a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna write it down, right? If
Mm-hmm.
I'm driving, I'll just do like, hey, take a note, and I'll just write it down.
Mm-hmm.
A weird thing for me now is like I'll have these streams of consciousness and I'll come up with like content ideas. Like, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting thought. Like there's maybe something there. And so I have a list, I'll look at it. I don't know how many. I have 186 notes on my phone of content ideas that some of them will never see the light of day. Most of them will never see the light of day, but these are just like phrases or thoughts or whatever. And I just write them
Mm-hmm.
down. And now for me, that turns into content ideas, but oftentimes it's just the brain dump, right? It's in my head.
Yeah.
It comes out of
Started
my
off
head. So,
with that.
so a brain dump or journaling, again, I don't do journaling, but I do these brain dumps. Some people do the journaling piece. Like dear diary, this is whatever, but you can do whatever or just write down what happened that day or whatever it is. But the idea of like, it's in my head, it needs to get out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
So writing it down, the idea of, this is going to sound, again, this is going to sound foofy, but it's so underrated. But practicing gratitude and like writing down some things that you're thankful for, like actively writing
Yes.
them down or
Very
saying them
helpful.
out loud, like some
Mm-hmm.
things that you're thankful for,
Mm-hmm.
highly underrated for
Mm-hmm.
managing stress. Because in the moment you're like, what is good in the world? Like
Yeah, but it
this.
makes those things come to the forefront. So like
Yes.
that's where your focus goes. I started doing that during your 6 week challenge.
Yeah.
And I will say for the first week, I'm like, this is so stupid. Like
Yep.
I keep repeating the same few things.
Yeah.
Or like I have like 8 on heavy rotation.
Yeah.
So like combinations of the 3. Um, but after a while, it just became such a night. Like I looked forward to it.
Yeah.
So we would do it at dinner, and we would just like talk about
Mm-hmm.
the. I mean, each of us would share one, so that
Mm-hmm.
the dinner conversation wasn't entirely that, and Emerson
Yeah.
could actually choose food. But we moved on, and it just felt really nice to end your day talking about something that you were really glad for
Yeah.
in whatever aspect. Like it could have been like I was glad that it was sunny today because
Mm-hmm.
it's been rainy for a week, and the sun does wonders for the mood. Or like I'm glad that I finished a book.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is as long as it's something
So
you're
small.
yeah. It's
we
very
do it
helpful.
we do it at dinner as well. We call it like favorite things, like what was your favorite thing today. and
Yeah.
and the twins are just like dinosaur, rawr, right? Like they're too young to get it. Like Levi will sometimes say things that actually happen, and sometimes he'll like, I'm like, you lived a different life in your head than you lived in real life today. Like he's like, I love that I went to Grammy's house and then Gigi's house and then I had a pizza, and then I'm like, you did none of those things today. Like that
You stayed home, right?
you did zero of those things today. But like Megan and I will do it, and there's times where we look at each other, we're like, what was good today? Like,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
force yourself in those days where you're like, this was a really hard day, to find something to be grateful
Mm-hmm.
for is so valuable. And it's one of the last things that I do with Levi before we put him down. Like, the twins are a little bit younger for this and they can't sit still. But Levi, like his bedtime routine is like, all right, we're going to read 2, like when it's me that puts him down, we're going to read 2 books. We're going to do your prayers. We're going to sing a song. When we do our prayers, it's like, hey God, thank you for
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And it's usually, I do it like I'm praying from his perspective, sort of thing. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like, for me, I have to force myself into that spot. Like, hey, thank you that, today he's at daycare, but like the twins are at my mom's house. Like, thank you that Gigi and Papa live so close to us and we get to see them. Like, thank you
Mm-hmm.
that, we have this house and this comfy bed to be in, and it's just those simple things, because 1, it's valuable for them, but 2, for us to have that
Mm-hmm.
positive perspective, because it's very easy to get buried. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're talking about releasing serotonin is one of the ways that we do this. Right. This is, and I don't want to get too into the, I'm not going to overstep my boundaries here, but the idea of like, why do people struggle with depression, particularly this time of year, right? Like seasonal affective disorder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that a problem? Is because we have lower serotonin. Like we don't have as much vitamin D. We're not producing as much serotonin. This is why it's valuable to go walk outside, get some vitamin D. Like,
Yes.
or I have like sitting over here, like one of these like sun lights that I'll
Mm-hmm.
turn on and get myself in the morning, particularly if I'm at the gym in the morning and I'm like, I'm not going to get outside for 4 or 5 hours today. The first 4 or 5 hours of the day, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to get 5-10 minutes of just the light on me, just because it's like, hey, it's brightness, there's life in the world, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um but the reason why people have depression is they have inherently low serotonin levels, and so the antidepressant medication is SSRIs, which is to increase your serotonin levels. That's the
Mm-hmm.
premise of them, is they're going to increase like your baseline serotonin levels. And so there are some things that we can do. Now there's some supplements and things, ashwagandha, and there's things like that you can do as well that are valuable to this. Take vitamin D, be outside, walk. All of these things are good, right? All the things
Mm-hmm.
that we talk about: exercise, good nutrition, walking, being outside, all of these things that are for fat loss or for nutrition in general, right? Or health in general, are going to help manage your stress. And then vice versa, you help manage your stress. That makes it easier to do those things. It is cyclical that way. But the
Mm-hmm.
idea is, if I can be doing things to raise my serotonin levels, that's going to help manage stress, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting at I'm starting a little bit of a higher level. So this is
Mhm.
where, uh, again, people can get too into this with like the morning routine. Like, oh, like I saw this one dude and he's like obnoxious. His name's Chris Crone. I'm going to call him out because he's obnoxious. And he's like, I have like this 5 hour morning routine that he talks
Is
about.
he
He's like,
single?
no, he's married. He's got kids. And his thing is like, he's like, I'm going to live to be 185. Like, I've hacked the world. He's like just obnoxious. He's an obnoxious person. He started in real estate, but now he's like getting into health stuff. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you have no idea what you're talking
Yeah.
about. And he's like, if you saw, he like does his videos with like gold bars and stacks of cash on his, like, he's that level of like an obnoxious
He's
human being.
that guy.
Yeah. So, but he's like, I got this, 5 hour morning routine where like I get in the cold thing and then and then I do my gratitudes and then I do cardio while listening to whale orgasm noises and, like all this like weird, like dead serious. This is like the Aaron Rodgers stuff too. He's like, this is healing my Achilles is, like I'm listening to, like stuff is just weird, right? Like we don't need to
Oh
go into this, but the
man.
idea of having some structures, some routines in your life that are things that are regularly increasing your serotonin levels, increasing your mood, getting you into a place where you're able to start the day not at a level 7, but at a level
Mhm.
3. So bookend your day with it, right? So like this is going to sound so simple, right? But like my morning, there's a 10-minute, 12, 15-minute thing that I do. I sit here while I'm having my breakfast. Okay. I sit here, I got the light on me, I have my Bible open, I read my Bible and I pray for 5 minutes, right? That's the beginning of my day. At the end of my day, I'm going to do a little bit of a brain dump and I'm going to have the time, the gratitude, I have the favorite things and I have the prayer with Levi at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Those are my things, okay, that are consistent that I'm going to
Mhm.
do. Come hell or high water, that's going to happen because those things allow me just on a consistent basis. Those are dailies, right? Then you have weeklies, monthlies, etc.
Mhm.
Okay, but these are things that are going to do it. So highly underrated in this, and this is I'm going to tell this story to illustrate this. But having fun, having fun in your life, particularly in the context of social connection, real connection, not text messaging, like real connection increases your serotonin. Now, real connection also has the ability to be stressful, right? So you have to understand, like,
Yeah.
cut out negative people in your life, right? If you can, right? But like have boundaries. This is an appropriate thing. Like there's a great book called Boundaries that's worth reading if you like have a hard time doing this. And that might be the only book that I ever recommend on this podcast because I'm not great, but like fantastic book. But the idea of like have boundaries, but people who fill your cup,
Mhm.
right, and have fun. So like when I have somebody who's like a client who's just having a, I think you and I talked about this when I was like, you need to go have some fun. Like call Heather,
Yeah.
what I mean? Like go on a date night with John, like go get your nails done. Like what fills your cup? What gives you some joy?
Mhm.
Because when we don't do that, then we're trying to pour from an empty cup. We're like we're starting from a deficit. So and I think I told this story before, but I'll say it in a different context. Last December, it came up for me. So last December, early December, I got sick, and that threw me off. And then it was like 2-3 weeks where I like couldn't just get myself back into it. Right, I was like, it was stressful, and I couldn't get myself back into a groove. I wasn't working out, I wasn't posting anything, whatever it was, and it carried all the way through Christmas into the new
Mhm.
year. And I was like, I can't get myself out of this. And because it wasn't that there was a stressful situation that I didn't handle well, right? Being sick and then the after effects of that, like not being able to do work and those types of things. And because of that, then I just like couldn't handle any stress, right? I was
Yeah.
like in a deficit and I couldn't get myself to go do anything that was helping me, right? This is how we spiral in the wrong direction. And so it was like need some connection. So my wife
Mhm.
literally was like, "You." One of my best friends moved to Virginia uh, a year ago. It was like a year and a couple of months before that, and I hadn't been to see him. I'd only seen him a couple times since they moved, and I was like, and she was like, I called him. They're fine. Like, go visit them. Like, I will take the kids for the weekend. Go visit him in Virginia, and that's like right? First of all, like,
Baller wife move.
yeah, just absolute sensational wife, and I'm incredibly grateful that I
Right.
have her, right, and that she was willing to do that for me. But she saw
Mm-hmm.
like you need connection and you need to go have some
Mm-hmm.
fun. And so I went down with him, and it wasn't like we sat there and we like talked through like, oh man, like what's going on, like what's. We like went to Top Golf and we got
Yeah.
buffalo
Just
wings and
recharging.
we just had fun. And
Yeah.
it wasn't like I was there for a long time, but the idea of like that was, and I came back and I was able to kind of start to move in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why it required something so extreme was that I had neglected it for months prior to that. Like I had
Right.
not been doing a good job of taking care of myself and having fun and doing things, that then I needed something extreme to do it versus being more regular about it. I felt that this year a little bit. And part of why I tried to take some time off. Like I took the week between Christmas and New Year's off from the gym. Like I,
I was
I took, I told
very
you,
glad.
I told you when I took it, I took a week at the end of the summer and I was like, I don't think I've taken a week of vacation from the
Mm-hmm.
gym in 4 years. Like I took
Mm-hmm.
3 days off when Megan and I went to California for a baby moon after, before the twins. But aside from that, like since I started working there, I did not like take days off from coaching at the gym intentionally. Like I did it if
Mm-hmm.
like the kids were sick or I was sick or whatever it was, but like it wasn't like, oh, I'm just taking days. And it wasn't like I did anything. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do it. It was just like I took time off
Mm-hmm.
to, and then I tried to do something fun. Like we tried to do something enjoyable during that time. Like, hey, we're gonna go out to breakfast. We're gonna go do whatever. Like you know the things that bring you joy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something, it could be something as simple as like doing Legos, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
don't let it be something that it's like, oh, this, it has to look a certain way. Like, oh, I should be reading or what, like no, do the things that are fun. Like one of the things that reflecting in this time of the year and the new year, talk about this with Megan. And I'm like, hey, one of the things I want to do a better job of, because I still felt it this year. I was like, I need to do a better job of regularly doing this. So I'm like, I want to go golf this summer more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a good golfer, but
Because you
it's
don't do it enough.
no, it's because I'm not a good golfer. I mean, I might get a little bit better, but I don't have dreams of becoming a good golfer. But the idea is I'm going to
Yeah.
be outside in a nice place. Like golf courses are a nice grassy place. I'm out in
They're
nature.
pretty.
It's a sunny day. Have a drink, play a game that and the reason why I don't want to be good is because I don't want it to be stressful where I'm trying to be good. I'm just like, if I go into it with like, I'm going to lose a half a dozen golf balls, have a couple drinks, be outside,
Yep.
hang out with a buddy, like that's a good time for me.
Yep.
That's what it looks like to. What are you doing? I put it on the counter. A different one. Oh, my wife just walked in and is looking, Amy saying hi. She's like looking for gift
No.
cards. Those are the gift cards. You're on 100% on video. This is what's happening.
I
This
love
is
her.
just keep going. I like saw her. I saw her head in like the bottom corner of the thing. I'm like, what is that? I didn't even know you were home. I have my noise canceling things on. Did you hear that whole thing? I texted you and I said, "What lovely time." Oh, so she heard me like. I wouldn't have given you a
Talking
compliment
about what
if
a
I knew
great
you
wife
were
she
here.
is.
No, I'm all frazzled. Oh, geez. Yeah. So the idea is like we want to be proactive with taking care of ourselves and doing things that are enjoyable and fun and do this like raises your serotonin levels. So some
Mm-hmm.
things that are fun. So if you're thinking about, all right, how do I manage my stress? And we're almost at the end here. How do I manage my stress? Right. So there's the strategies for in the moment, right, with the breathing and those types of things. There's increasing your capacity by intentionally putting yourself into potentially positive, stressful situations and helping yourself mitigate them.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing that stressors are not in our control and that stress is ambivalent to what the stressor is. Your response is the same. Your body's response is the same. And so you can increase your ability to handle potentially negative stressors by handling positive stressors, things that
Mm-hmm.
are putting you in the right direction. and again, stress is not inherently bad.
Mhm.
There are potentially great benefits to stress. And then
Mhm.
being proactive and decreasing your chronic stress is going to come from doing all of these, right? All these things that this is trying to allow you to do are also the things that increase or decrease your stress, which is going for a walk and being outside and exercise and nutrition and all of these types of things. Um, like I don't know about you, at the end of the week, like we just ate out a lot last week. Just ate out a
Mhm.
lot last week, and I got to the point I was like, I could really use a vegetable. Like I was like, I could really, that would, and it felt better, right? You feel better, and I'm less stressed, and I'm like, okay, this is simpler
Mhm.
when I'm doing these things. But the other thing is have fun, practice gratitude, be mindful of your decisions, and then
Mhm.
increase social connection. Like this is gonna sound, and I'm gonna go here, and it's weird that I'm gonna end here, but like if you're married, have sex, or you're in a relationship, have sex, like
I was waiting for
connect.
Megan to come back
Yeah,
in.
no, that's, that'd be awesome. No, we're gonna end the podcast right now.
We gotta
No, but like level of connection, like real, genuine, honest, vulnerable connection.
go.
Not
Mhm.
somebody you have to put on a like. This isn't like being social for the sake of being social. This is
Yeah.
somebody who you can be truly yourself with and connect with in a real level. Like there's a reason why like intimacy
Mhm.
is developed through that, but it's also cyclical, right? Like you do this through people who you can be that. So have some, make some friends, find some friends, uh,
Mhm.
develop those relationships with those friends, and be intentional about the time with them, because
Mhm.
it's very easy. That is one thing that like this comes back to, I've told this story before about like why do we go out on regular date nights as opposed to go on
Mhm.
vacations, because for us the regular social connection with each other and then with other couples and things like that does more for us in terms of managing the stress, which we are bombarded with stressors at this current stage in our life.
Yes.
Children for sure,
Yep.
work absolutely, family, all the things, right? There's no shortage of stressors in our life right now, so we have to be proactive with it as best we can.
Mhm.
And then you choose, this is the final thing that I'll say, you have to choose the things that are going to matter to you in terms of stress. So I posted this yesterday, and I got way too many responses of people being like, so I posted uh a little, I got a my wife and I got a coaster, like a funny coaster for my mother-in-law that said something along the lines of, I'm gonna maybe butcher it, but it's like, I don't always have time to fold laundry, but when I do, I don't.
Oh my God.
Did you
I saw
see the
that post.
video of, now all the laundry's
The
done.
one basket stressed me out. I was like,
I
"Oh,
have
Jeff." And I was like, "Oh, Jeff."
I have
Like,
5
oh.
full laundry baskets and a dryer full of clean clothes right now.
And to anyone who did not see the post, these are not your human size laundry baskets. I have never seen laundry baskets that
They're
large. I don't know
no,
where you got
they're
them.
like the mesh ones. They're really like the ones that you would bring in
They're
college.
massive.
Well, they're
Oh
massive
my
because I've
God.
stretched them out because I just keep shoving laundry in
Holy
there.
Moses.
And
I
now,
was very impressed
uh,
that A, that you have that many clothes, and B, that you still have clothes that you can wear.
well,
Because I assume that that's the entire like contents of everyone's closet and dressers is just in
no,
those.
it's not. It's a lot of Megan's clothes. It's a lot of the twins' clothes. I have like 6 things that I wear, and so I just pull them out of the dryer because I just wear sweatpants every day. I'm wearing real jeans today. 10 points to me. But the idea is like we have like, it would be very easy for that to stress me out, and there's times where it does. Right? You're like, oh man, like we just gotta freaking do the laundry. And I got like, bless all the people who respond, and they're like, my mother called me. She's like, I have time. Would you like me to come fold your laundry? I was like, the pride of a 32-year-old is not going to allow my mother to come over and fold my laundry. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I love you desperately, and I feel very
Like, you're
grateful.
off right now.
I appreciate it very much, but I cannot. I cannot, as an adult with a mortgage, a minivan, and 3 children, have my mother come over and fold my laundry. Like I can't, I can't bring myself to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
the idea being like, it's very easy for that to stress me out, because
Mm-hmm.
that's a stressor, right? But at some point, you just have to choose. You have to figure out what are going to be the things that are not going to be that, and that comes from the choosing, finding your level, because
Mm-hmm.
pre-kids, like this is where it comes down to, again, increasing your threshold. You remember like in high school where like you would find out, like you would, or middle school dance, right? And you're like gonna ask somebody to like dance with you,
Mm-hmm.
and the stress levels of like so and so wants to dance with you at the next slow song, and the stakes
Yeah,
of
because you
it.
never asked for yourself. You
No,
sent a
it's like you
friend.
send your friend to ask somebody else's friend, and it's just like but the
Yeah.
stakes were so high, right?
Yes.
It's like, oh
So
my, and then it's devastating. Like I remember being devastated when there was like a girl that I had a crush on. Then I was like, I'm gonna ask her to dance at the next one. Like I was like, I'm not even gonna send a friend. I'm gonna go do it myself. And I walked over and she was dancing with somebody else, and I was like crushed. It was the last slow song, and I was devastated. And then you look at it and you kind of laugh because, or like Facebook memories are hysterical. Like things come
oh
up on
yeah.
Facebook because Facebook came out in like its peak when I was like a junior, senior in high school, freshman, sophomore in college, and so like when I was posting like it was Twitter, like every 2-3 times a day, and I'm just like posting
Mhm.
like whatever was on my mind. This is before smartphones where I had to like go on my
Yeah.
computer to post it, right? And you just did this thing.
That was back in the old format where it was like Jeff Dalzell
Is
is.
yeah, and so there's like weird like there's just weird
Well,
things that
now
come up,
he
and you're like,
doesn't.
the rest of the sentence is not here, like
Yeah.
um but you look at it and you're like, man, I was such an angsty teenager. Like this is not, like I made this so dramatic, like it was the like it's going to come up again, but like when I was making my decision for college, like where I was going to go to school, like every
Mhm.
year that when that comes up and I was like going back and forth on what college, and every day I'm like, I decided where I'm going to go. I didn't decide. I wish I knew where I was going to go to college. And you're just like, man, dude, like the stakes were so high to 18-year-old, 17-year-old Jeff for this thing that now would like not even cross the threshold of the top 10 decisions I make in a day. But it's because when life changes and your threshold changes, and
Yeah.
you're like, this is not a stressful thing. Like, all right, the laundry's not done. Like the
Yeah.
the stressful conversation is like right now, it's like, how do we get our toddler to like not just poop in his pull up, but
Mm-hmm.
while he sleeps, like to
That is
hold
a
his
stressor.
to hold his poop all day, and then
Yeah.
poop as soon as we leave his room. Like, how do we do that? That's the stressor. Or like, how do we get our 2-year-old not to slap our older kid? Like, that's the stressor. Or like,
Which is it? Is it Charlotte? Is she?
no, no,
Oh.
Parker came in flying the other day. Like was in the other room with Megan, was upset. She put him down. He came running in like right for Levi and smacked him in the face. Like he was going for him. Like he had a one-track mind, and like he like slapped him before Levi even realized what happened. It was from something Levi did 2 minutes earlier. And I was like, oh my gosh. So like that's
Yeah.
the level of like that's a stressful situation. Like the laundry is not. Like
No.
the laundry will get done. Like it'll get done when it gets done.
Yeah, and it's clean clothes.
It's
It's not
clean
like you have
clothes.
piles and
You can
piles of
pull it
dirty
out. Like
clothes.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, would it be nice if this laundry was away? 100%. But like on the priority list of things. So this is where
Mm-hmm.
increasing your capacity changes the threshold of what is stressful for you.
Mm-hmm. I had a real grown up moment today.
Mm-hmm.
I took laundry out of the dryer as
Mm-hmm.
I was getting Em ready for school.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? You're never going to guess.
Did she fold it?
It's already folded and put away.
What a champion. Go M.
I know. I mean, granted, it was just gym clothes, so like very easy to fold and put away.
You know,
But still,
good for her.
but still. No,
What?
mine,
Oh,
not
you
hers.
did it. Oh,
Yeah.
I
It's like,
thought I
come.
thought she did it.
No, I'm teaching her how to do her own laundry at
Oh,
this point because like she's the kid. She tries something on, and if it touches her body for more than 30 seconds, it's dirty.
yeah,
So I'm like, I'm doing your laundry constantly.
yeah,
And like it's time for you to start doing your own.
yeah.
All right, back to
Well,
stressors.
so there's our plan here, right? So strategies during it, increase your threshold,
Mm-hmm.
strategies for impacting your starting